So the rumors were there, so you got used to that. That was part of it. Okay. You got involved with the union and got politically active locally. Why? What was the interest in that for you?
Well, that's one of the things that I was brought up. My father was the chairman of the Democratic Party when I was growing up, so I've always been involved politically. And so naturally, once I got involved in the plant and the UAW, I got involved in the political part there as well. And so I was part of the CAP committee, and back then they had us assigned to different groups. Some went to the city council meetings, some went to the school boards, some went to the county boards, and then back then that I was, my assignment was the city council, so I started going to the meetings all the time and watching.
For those who don't know, what does CAP stand for?
Well, actually, it's two. It's community action program, and then it's also political action, which is the reverse of it. So that's we always call it our CAP PAC. Part of it is giving money back to the community in different ways and things, and the PAC was the political action part of it.
Okay. So your assignment from CAP was to attend the council meetings?
Right.
And
that's just going through that. Back then, I didn't feel that the makeup of the city council really reflected the makeup of the city. And at that time, it was mostly more of your business people that were on there. There weren't any of the blue-collar workers that were actually on there to kind of give their input on the different things. So I decided that I would run, and it was funny because when the troops just came back from the Gulf when they had the parade and stuff, and to see all the yellow ribbons that they had on the trees and the posts along the way, that was kind of one of the issues that I fought for. There was one of the employees of the city drove a bus, and her son had gone over to the Gulf when the Gulf War started the very first time, and she wanted to put a yellow ribbon on her bus, on the mirror, and they wouldn't let her do it. And back then, if you put a ribbon on one of the telephone poles or something, they'd make you take it off. And so that was one of the things that I really fought for, and when I was successful in getting on the council, that was one of the first things that I was able to do, was to let the employee put that yellow ribbon on her bus, and it meant a lot to her. And it just kind of shows, too, how the sentiment of the community has changed from the outpouring of people that were there to welcome the troops back to Janesville that day.
And you were on the council for 16 years.
Right.
Was that your plan to?
No, actually, my original plan was to just be on there 10. I figured that that's long enough for anybody to serve, and I really enjoyed it that much that I stayed on for 16. And then I always said to myself that once it got to the point where it wasn't any fun anymore, I was going to get off. And just some of the things that were going on, I just didn't agree with, and it got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore. So I figured it was time to get off. And I still have people talking to me now that, hey, we'd sure like to have you back and get involved. And I still, as you know, come to some of the city council meetings just to
let us know what goes on out there.
Express my opinion on different issues.
What do you think you've learned over your 40-plus years at the plant? Because it really, clearly, your formative years you spent at the plant. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned that you would share?
Well, one of the biggest things about our plant, and it was true right up to the very end, was that the people at the plant were definitely willing to be able to share. We were making good money, and we were very willing to share that with different groups and organizations within the community. Whenever anybody had a cause, that's the first place that they would go to would be the plant. And one of the examples there was the last food drive that we had. Everybody was losing their jobs, and I think back then they still were able to feed 300 and some families. And you figure that was at the same time that the plant was closing, and people didn't know what their future was going to be. So right up until the very end, the people at the plant were very generous with the different causes within the community.
So there was a real feeling, it sounds like, that the plant was part of the community.
Oh, definitely. You know, so many people actually from Janesville work down there or have had family that work there. And I guess that was one of the things too, and I'll just go in a different direction for just a bit, but one of the things
Please.
One of the things that was so unique about the plant was that the diversity of the workforce that was down there, because so many people back then, for some reason, the people of Janesville didn't really want to work at the plant. So many of the people that did come were some from the farmers and, you know, the people that weren't really afraid to work. And it kind of turned into like a generational thing where it was brothers that worked here, you had fathers and sons and uncles that worked there. And that was even like the case with me, where my son eventually worked down there and is still currently working for GM. He had to transfer to Texas. But that was one of the strong points that our plant had was the work ethic that they had, because of the, like I say, kind of the bonds from the different communities and things that they did come from.
You touched on something that I wanted to also talk about a little bit, and that is the diversity factor at the plant. There's also, you know, there was men, women, whites, blacks, everybody I think worked at the plant. There was, how did that environment function?
Actually, that was not totally true for a long time, because for a long time women couldn't work at the plant. Doris Tome, who was still alive here in Janesville, was one of the first, I think she was the first woman that was hired down there.
And when was that?
I couldn't even.
I mean, even a decade.
Oh, it probably would have been in the 50s or 60s.
So until the 50s or 60s, there were no women employed.
And then even in that, at that point, the only place where they wouldn't put them on the line, they would put them up in what we called the cushion room. That's where they made the seats and things for the vehicles down. And that's the only place where the women were actually able to work. And with people like Doris, a lot of that has changed around. She was kind of the Rosie the Riveter of the plant here, and was really one of the driving forces to be able to get women on an equal standing with the men down there, and so that they could go on any of the jobs they wanted to and wherever they wanted to in the plant.
And as far as people of color?
When I first started there weren't a whole lot of people of color, and that's one of the things too that have evolved through the years, where there's all different type of nationalities that worked at the plant, and there was definitely a mix of color down there, not only on the line, in management, and within the union as well.
Okay. As far as, you know, your part was you were on the line. Do you feel like you had much input into what else was going on at the plant? Was it through the union that you were able to express yourself, or?
No, and that's actually one of the things, or one of the ways that work evolved through the years, was when we were first hired. Like I said, I had to do the 5 push-ups. You were there for your muscle, not your brain. They just wanted your physical input. And that's one of the things that through the years evolved, where they not only wanted your physical body, they wanted your mind as well, because when it came times to make changes on your jobs, who's the logical person to ask? The one that's doing it. Ask him for what his input was. And so I think that through the years, even with the use of computers, you know, back when I first started there, computers were nothing, and then later on, you know, towards the end, we had computers all over the plant for different jobs and operations and things like that.